Okay, hello everyone. Good morning and welcome to Sunday Morning Grace. This is Reverend Carolyn McGee with Reverend Dawn Simpson, and we have my dog in the background in case you're wondering who that crazy fool is. And today we're talking about vulnerability. So to get us started and get in the energy, we always like to gather our circle. So if it is safe for you, just close your eyes, put your feet on the ground, open up your body, and take some breaths. And if you've got background sounds, just like I do, I invite you to ask them what the message is. What do they need from you? What are they trying to tell you? Why is this happening? Because with a beautiful topic like vulnerability, there's an offer or an invitation to look inside and see what we are afraid of showing the world. How are we not being our authentic selves in some way? How can we trust our angels just a little bit more? Put your hands over your heart and feel how your heart beats without you having to do anything. The rising and falling of your chest as you breathe. Knowing that you can control to a certain extent how you breathe, but that your body will breathe, even if you're not aware of it. And know that your angels truly have your back, just like your body does. They are working on our behalf in every moment, just like our heartbeats. And I invite you to slow your breath just a little bit more if you can. And really feel your heart beating in your chest. Feel the energy of it as your skin moves slightly underneath your hands. And with that knowledge, with the faith that we are truly cared for, let's bring our energy back to this time in this space and get vulnerable.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah. All right. So, good morning, everyone. I want to just pop over to Facebook for one quick sec and see if we've got anybody joining us over there so I can say hi. So Dawn, why don't you start us off with, what does vulnerability mean to you? Or, what does the dictionary say vulnerability is?
Actually, I was looking online at the definition of it, and it says the state of being open to injury or appearing as if you are. And it's actually the Latin word for wound.
Ooh.
That's what I said. I thought that was very interesting, because when you think of vulnerability, you think wound.
Yeah.
So I think that with vulnerability, you can be vulnerable. And that was the other thing that was in it too. They had given different areas of your life that you can be vulnerable. You know, it could be in a relationship, it could be with your job, it could be with finances. And it basically, and it was good to your point, Carolyn, when you were in our, when you were just leading our meditation. And it's pointing to, where are we not showing up? Where are we not showing our true selves? Where are we trying to hide? What part of ourselves are we trying to hide so that we're not showing the world, for better or for worse? So is it something, is it your power that you're trying to hide from the world? Or is it your, let's say, weakness, where you're feeling weak, that you're trying to hide? You want to appear to your family, your coworkers, wherever you are, you want to appear strong, successful. And if you show that you've had struggles in any areas of your life, and that makes you vulnerable to people judging you as less than, as not good enough. And nobody wants to feel that way. So that's why a lot of times we put on this facade that we are super strong, even if we're not feeling it. We pretend that we are, because we're so vulnerable in the state that we're feeling, that we can't let other people see that. Because what are they going to think? I've been showing them my whole life that I'm this super strong person, but inside I'm the actual opposite. And I can't let that, let that be shown, because fill in the blanks. Why? Because
Right. And don't you think that we're our own worst critics, or we're our own worst enemies when it comes to that? It's like, when we take that risk, when we show the world who we truly are, everybody's so happy. And I'm not talking about, getting on Facebook and, posting a crazy long, my life is a mess story. Although if that's you and you're comfortable with it, go for it. But I think for the most part, it's showing your heart. When I started my dog walking business, I was afraid to admit that I loved it, because it was so important to me. And I had started it out of desperation. I lost my job, and I had 2 kids and a mortgage. I needed to do something. The world was going into a recession, and I couldn't find a job. I was feeling very vulnerable. I was terrified. But as I got more involved in it, I was afraid to tell people how much I loved it, because I was afraid acknowledging how much I loved it might make it go away. I didn't have that. This was before I really dove in and connected with my angels. I didn't have the faith that God really had my back. And then a couple years later, when I started when I remembered that I could do the animal communication, because, everything's got a path, right? Working with all of those animals made me realize and remember that I used to communicate as kids, and I could do it again. But then I was afraid to tell my pet care clients that I could talk to the animals because I was afraid, I was vulnerable, that they would think I was crazy, that they might shun my kids in this little town. I felt very vulnerable about it. But when I finally got over my fear, a couple people were like, well, that's weird. But everybody else was like, that's really cool. What's that like? So, trusting my heart, trusting my angels, stepping out and being myself, takes courage, and it takes getting out of here, because we can make up all kinds of crazy stories to stop us because we're frightened. And that's what being vulnerable is. It's that wounded little child inside of us that's afraid, either has been hurt or is afraid of getting hurt again.
Yeah. And there's that wound in there, and that's where that's perfectly said and perfectly defined, Carolyn. That is the Latin word for wound. And I think that's what it does. Vulnerability speaks to the wound. It speaks to the wounded part of you that is, I think that's what it does, kind of knocking at your door and saying, hello, remember me? I'm the wound. I'm still here.
Yeah.
I haven't gone anywhere because you haven't worked through me, because you're afraid. You've got this fear. But guess what? Until you free me, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to keep knocking. And that shows up in the way of vulnerability.
Yeah.
And so we then have to step back and say, okay, well, I don't want to feel that anymore. I don't want to feel vulnerable. I don't want to feel that fear. I don't want to be worried, to speaking to your story, Carolyn. I don't want to be worried about, what are people going to think about me being able to talk to animals? That's who you naturally are. And if the world cannot accept that, but they can accept that. You had those few people that said, well, that's weird. Well, okay, well then that's okay that they don't understand it. It doesn't mean they're poo-pooing it. They just don't get it, and they're not ready to get it just yet, and that's okay. There's hundreds of thousands of other people who do and who want what you have.
Yeah.
So to speak to that wound, it's it's about time that you free yourself from that wound. And like you said, it's all up here. What are we willing to allow to lead us?
Yeah.
Are we going to allow more of this or more of this?
Yes. And, and our minds can create such big stories, way bigger than reality. I had such, to stay with that same example, I had so many fears of like being ostracized in town and, losing my business. And I really made a nice big fat story in my head. And I did have, an ex-husband who wasn't a believer. So, I had some reality mixed into it too. But even with the people who were like, oh, that's weird, nobody said, well, you're weird and you can't walk my dog. So they're like, I don't believe you, or I don't get it. But the reputation that you've built doing this, that's solid. They're not real. I mean, yes, they're connected, but our brain, makes up these massive connections to protect ourselves, right? I mean, vulnerability, I look at vulnerability as a little child. She's often very, very young, and something happened to her when she was really young. Maybe she said that, she wanted to be a writer when she grew up and was told that you can't do that. Or, maybe she wanted to be a rocket scientist and she was told she can't do that. I mean, who knows? We all have dreams as little children. Or maybe she was told that it's not safe to do anything. Maybe there was a trauma. Maybe, there's so many things that can shape us as early children. And we make up a story to protect ourselves that it's not safe to be ourselves. And only by loving, only by loving that little girl that's inside of us, can she feel safe enough to come out, because she's gonna express her opinions, whether it's directly or not.
Yeah. somehow, some way, in the form of freedom and coming out, or in the form of anger, you know, anger that you don't know where it's coming from, or sadness or depression because your true self is being suppressed and hidden and judged first and foremost by yourself because of your outside environment, our outside environment, society. But you know what's coming in now is, because of 2020 and everything that the world went through in 2020, I think that people are more open to who we truly are now, because, and I can't put my finger on why. I think that maybe because we've been shut in for a little while. For others, you know, longer than others. Some people never stayed home. You know, the nurses and the frontline workers, of course, it never happened as far as, you know, being home and shut in. But other people, for months they were shutting, and some people are still working from home for, you know, for the past year plus. But I think more and more people are beginning to feel the hunger of their true selves and really wanting to come out and show it and experience it more and express it more, because the feelings of rage or anger or sadness or depression, I mean, look at depression and suicide, they're higher than ever. And more people, because we've been forced to be shut in, have been doing more inner work, and maybe a lot of us aren't comfortable yet with coming out. And again, that's showing up in the form of, you know, all of these named emotions and expressions, and they're not healthy ones, they're not healthy expressions, the anger and depression and so on. And so it is time for us to come out and step out, be vulnerable. It's okay. It's okay. But first, work with this. This is the big driver here for a lot of us. So
Yeah.
be careful what you say here, because that a lot of times can be your leader, your guide, or your showstopper. So be careful what you're putting in here and what you're allowing to be in here.
But don't ignore it, because it has a really powerful message for you, because those tapes that we've got running in the background in our mind, you know, the dreams that we have, those, you know, those night terror dreams or those things, you know, they're sending us messages of, you know, of our fears, of our fear of something, our fear of being seen, our fear of being authentic, our fear of being alone, our fear of being seen as different, whatever it is. And, you know, when we do have those, I call them night terrors, you know, those really horrible dreams, it's information. And yeah, it's uncomfortable, but it's acknowledging the fear that we're holding inside. So it's our subconscious, it's our angels and guides saying, you got to pay attention to this. You're afraid of something. And so, you know, get curious. You know, use your journal. I think every single week we talk about our journals, right? Because it's so powerful. It's so important. You know, what's coming up for you on a repeated basis that you're afraid to be seen as, or you're afraid to let the world know about you. And then is there one small thing that you can try? You know, I'm not a big rip the Band-Aid off person. Never have been. It's just not, it's never been my style. It doesn't work for me personally. And again, everybody's got to do what's right for them. But, you know, if you can tell one person what your special gift is, if you can tell one person that you've got a dream to write a book, like you know, one of your things that you had mentioned, if you know, tell one person that you can communicate with angels, or that you see deceased loved ones, or you want to move, what you want to paint, you know, You want to be a rocket scientist. Whatever your dream is that you are holding so tight because you're afraid to be vulnerable and let people know what your passion is. You don't have the collective energy feeding all of the possibilities for that. Right?
Now, as I sit here taking all that in, Carolyn, it's bringing me back to the conversation we were having earlier. So last night, Carolyn and I were texting, and we both made, I have this thing written out near my bed about, tonight I'm going to dream and I'm going to commit to remembering my dream. And it was a few sentences about that. But the basic premise of it was I vowed to have a dream and remember it. So with regard to vulnerability, which is our topic here today, and lo and behold, I had this dream, and I mean, I'm calling it a nightmare because it woke me up and it scared me, and I didn't like it. And I went back to sleep, and I went back into the dream, and again, still didn't like it. And as you're talking, Carolyn, it's bringing me to mind that I'm kind of figuring out what the message was. So in a nutshell, there was a man who was following me, and he had bad intentions with me, and it was scaring the lights out of me. I mean, it freaked me out, and I was really scared, and I was running and hiding from him. And no matter what I did to run and hide and protect myself, I knew that he was going to still get to me. If I locked the door, if I jammed the door, I just felt, why am I even doing this? He's going to get through to me anyway. He's going to get past this. But here's the thing. Here's the key that just hit me. In the dream, the man really didn't have a face. It was a man. It was definitely a man in a man's body. But his face was kind of clouded. It was kind of a mystery. It's almost like I knew what his face looked like, but in the dream, it was a mystery. So here's what I just got out of it. I created this monster.
Mm-hmm.
This is my creation. I am creating this person, this energy to come and find me and attack me for every little thing that I do or try to do. And it's here. There's no person. There's nobody that's trying to get me. And I'm really going to sit more with this to try and go deeper with this, and recorrect and retrain the thoughts that I have in my mind with regard to the vulnerability part of it. And I know that this is going to be really freeing for me. And I'm sharing this out of vulnerability,
Mm-hmm.
but to also invite you to be open to your vulnerability. What nightmares are you having, if any? What dreams are you having that have left you stumped or mystified or questioning, what does this mean? I didn't really know what it meant until we're sitting here talking, and I'm like, oh, that's what it means. This is a self-created energy that's coming to find me and dumb me down and stop me. That's not really what's happening. It's really not. It's something that I've created in my mind is all. So I need to recreate and reformulate what I have and be vulnerable. I've got to be open to more, to the vulnerability myself in my new journey.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
And there's so much power in that. And that's, just even speaking it out loud. And, you're speaking it out loud here in Sunday Morning Grace, but the listeners, they don't need to do that. They don't need to go into a public forum. Yay, you, if you want to, but find one safe person to talk about your fears or talk about your dreams. What does make your heart really happy? What expands you? And what scares you a little bit? Every time I go on Facebook Live, my heart beats a little bit faster. It scares me a little bit. It makes me feel, vulnerable. Anybody who's been watching these for a while knows that I don't prepare the opening blessings. I have learned that they don't ever go the way I think
Right.
they should go.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel vulnerable because I'm an engineer. I like to have everything prepared. And so for me to trust, and I do, that my angels really do have my back and the right thoughts are going to come in and it's going to be completely appropriate and exactly what we need to do. But that takes a certain level of vulnerability and a big amount of trust for me to be able to do that when I get on here. And how can
Big trust.
Yeah. And how can we pivot that or move that into other parts of our lives? How can we be maybe a little bit more authentic with our loved ones? Is there a conversation that we've been avoiding because we're afraid of how somebody is going to react? We've all got relationships that we wish were a little bit different. We've had jobs that don't fulfill us, but we feel vulnerable or we feel fear around them. How can we have small conversations to convince this, I don't want to call her crazy person, but that's really not kind, the voice that's in our head who is trying to protect us and keep us safe by keeping us not doing things, not following our hearts. So what is one thing? And to
That was
the
important. A few weeks ago, we talked about marrying, right? The head and the heart, and allow them to speak to each other. Allow the head. That's important. There's a lot of good here, but allow it to speak to here too, and see how this likes what this is giving to it. And then vice versa. Allow the messages here to come here and see how you can process it in here. So keep the processing going, the communication back and forth, and keep the processing, and let it reveal what it needs to reveal itself to you. And journal, we always come back to that journal. Every time we come here, we talk to you about journaling. Get in the journal, get in the pages. What is the messages that are coming through for this communication? What are you receiving? Because guess what, an hour from now, a day from now, a week from now, you're not going to remember everything you received. You might remember a little nugget, but there was a lot of nuggets that came in and you just aren't going to remember them. You're not in that energy field constantly. So when you are and you're in that receiving mode, receive and write it down.
Yep.
And then revisit it and allow it to give you what it's trying to give you.
Yeah, because your brain is going to block it out. That's
Yeah.
That's part of the job. That's part of the beauty, because we're vulnerable.
Yeah.
And these different aspects of ourselves are trying to protect us, to keep us safe. So if we don't write things down, these insights that come into us, we're gonna protect ourselves the best way we can, which is, holy moly, that great idea that I had, I'm gonna forget that because that's too scary to do.
I invite you to join me. I just started one for 2021. And what I'm putting in it is all of these divine synchronicities that have been happening to me. So some of you know that I just decided to leave my job, my hairdressing job, and step into the role of my divine, more of my spiritual divine purpose, and doing more of that. And keeping this journal in 2021 is about me being conscious and noticing all of the divine things that are happening, the people that are reaching out, the people that I've found out about, or somebody told me about, or things that are happening to me with regard to support and guidance and validation in my next steps is really enlightening. And I go back already, and it's only been like a month that I've been, that I had started this. And I'm like, to my point, I didn't remember every little detail that happened until I reread it. And I'm like, oh my God, that's right. I forgot about that. And when I first started doing it, it had been like a week that I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And then I kept reminding myself. And then when I went to paper, I was like, oh my, I knew there were 4 of them, and I got 3 of them. And then I finally thought, and I remembered it. But another day that went by, I mean, I might have never remembered it. So really write it down when you get it. If you're not at your notebook, put it in your notes on your phone, and then, write it down in your book later. But the writing down is huge.
The writing down is definitely huge. It's so important. And, because that little vulnerable child that lives inside of us really is trying to keep us safe the only way she or he knows how. And that's to not let us step out, not be vulnerable, not show our hearts. And the easiest way, or a easy way, is to take those small steps.
Yep.
And
They don't have to be big.
They don't have to be big. No, they don't. And everybody's got someone that they can practice with. Find your safe person to practice with, and say one thing. Maybe one thing that you've been afraid to say, and see what the reaction is. And then write it down. Maybe it did hurt a little bit. Maybe it was scary. Maybe there was something that didn't go exactly right. But there's going to be something that beautiful that comes out of it. It's that faith of our angels that they're going to guide us to do what's best for us, and that they're going to support us. And that those bumps, because, life's got, I call them speed bumps, sometimes they're there to make us pay attention to something, and sometimes they're there to slow us down a little bit. Sometimes they're there to wake us up.
And in the form of a nightmare. So,
the form of a nightmare.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Well, my friend,
I know.
It flies like always.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so there's just been so much that we brought into you today with vulnerability. Allow anything that spoke to you to continue speaking to you, and to take the messages and the guidance that you receive from whatever it was that you received that touched you. And we ask that you're blessed by that wisdom and that knowledge and that guidance for your week, your month, your year, your life, whatever the case may be. So as we always finish our time with you, our tenets, I open my heart with deep gratitude and intend today to master my spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical energies. I am dedicated to my spiritual practice. I surrender to my soul's purpose through sacred prayer. I own my guidance.
I live in partnership with my angels. I serve with a loving heart. I am compassionate in every moment.
I trust it's all good. I allow immediate forgiveness. I honor my truth.
I listen to the spiritual messages within my physical body. I express myself creatively. I am one with Mother Earth. And so it is.
So it is.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. If you want to take a vulnerable step and make a comment on our Sunday morning grace, we would love to hear what this brought up for you and how we can support you. Bye-bye for now, everybody.
Bye for now. Till next time.
Time.
Bye.
Bye.